In this tutorial, we'll take a look at two ways of copying properties from one raw material to another. In the first way, we're going to add a new raw material and then copy all of the properties. So the first step is to add a new raw material. I'm going to add a new grade of citronellol to the system. This first stage is the same for adding any other raw material, so we click OK when we're done. And we see the usual screen for adding additional information to the raw material. I can add information into any of these tabs should I choose to, so I can add the identification, chemical name and the CAS number. And the area that takes the most work usually is actually the Properties tab. So if we take a quick look there, as it's new there are no properties available, but if we select Copy from Existing, we get the option to select a raw material that already exists from which to copy the properties and any composition from. So by entering in citronellol, I can see the other grade of citronellol that had already exists, select OK and copy over all of the properties that were associated with that material. So we can see the physical data properties, EC hazard properties, and if we go down the property groups, all of the properties will have been obtained from the material we selected. So there's GHS hazards, CLP hazards, all of the different groups have been populated. And if this is everything we needed to do with properties, we then need to change properties determined from no to yes in order that the material is accessible, and of course press save. So a really neat shortcut to adding lots of properties to a new raw material. Now let's move on to the second way of copying properties from one raw material to another. For this we use Modifier Raw Material. I've already added another grade of citronellol, Citronellol Special. All I did was add the name, the code and some information in the Identification tab. I've not added any properties at all. What I'm going to do here is use the Copy Properties function to copy properties from a different raw material over to this one. When you're modifying a raw material, the Copy Properties function works differently to when you're adding a new raw material. You still choose the raw material through a pick list, but then you can choose which property groups you want to copy. You don't have to copy all of them. This gives you much more control over the kind of information that's copied. So for example, you may not want to copy physical data, but some of the legislation, health and safety type information may be common to both. Additionally, you can choose to preserve the existing data on the material you're modifying, or you can overwrite it or remove it. All these options give you a lot of control as well as flexibility. When you're done, you press OK, and then you can take a look at the property groups that have been copied over. Property groups contain properties which may depend on the values of other properties which potentially are in other property groups. Now these are calculated properties. Examples of this are seen in the EC hazard labels and the EC hazard details property groups, and many others. In order for the values of these kinds of properties to be known, a property calculation has to be performed. When we look through the property groups we copied, we can see the property values are incomplete because they haven't been calculated yet. Let's return to the EC Hazard Labels property group and perform some property calculations so we can see the effect of them. So we select Calculate Now, and the application calculates all the property values based on the property values it has available. And now we can see the property values are much more like we would expect. When you use Modifier Raw Material to copy properties, it's very important you calculate those properties and then check everything is as you expect it to be. When you're confident, you can change properties determined to yes and save. So, two different ways to copy properties from one raw material to another, both providing useful shortcuts. For further information, please check out our website, our other videos on YouTube, or contact us. Thank you.